Fought on May 14th through the 15th of 1864, the Battle of Resaca was the first major engagement of the Atlantic Campaign in the Civil War. Situated on the north bank of the Oostenaula River, approximately 75 miles northwest of Atlanta, Resaca was located on the strategically important Western and Atlantic Railroad. The fighting at Resaca demonstrated that the outnumbered Confederate Army could only slow but not stop the advance of Union forces into Georgia. Following its November 1863 defeat at Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Confederate Army of Tennessee retreated 30 miles to the southeast and encamped in Dalton, Georgia for the winter. General Joseph E. Johnston assumed command of the demoralized Confederate troops and began preparations for a defensive struggle in the spring. Johnson entrenched his men in Dalton and along Rocky Face Ridge, a steep and rugged ridge line on the outskirts of the town. In early May 1964, Union Major General William T. Sherman opened the Atlanta campaign by moving south from Chattanooga with 110,000 troops. Sherman's forces consisted of three separate army groups: the Army of the Cumberland, under the command of George H. Thomas, the Army of Tennessee, led by James B. McPherson, and the Army of Ohio, commanded by John M. Schofield. Confederate forces were outnumbered approximately 2-1, but the last-minute arrival of reinforcements led by Major General Leonidas Polk increased Johnson's army to almost 70,000 men. The first skirmish of the campaign occurred on May 7th, when Union forces swept Confederate cavalry from Tunnel Hill, a small promontory in front of Rocky Face Ridge. Sherman then lined up his armies facing the ridgeline, and over the next 2 days he launched a number of small-scale attacks against the heavily fortified Confederate position. In the bloodiest of these encounters, Union soldiers fought their way up Rocky Face Ridge, while Confederate defenders rolled large rocks down upon the attackers. The Confederate position proved impregnable. However, the Union demonstrations against Rocky Face Ridge were merely a diversion, for Sherman had no intention of launching a full frontal assault against the well-entrenched Confederates. With Johnston's attention focused on the Union forces to his front, Sherman sent McPherson's 25,000-man Army of the Tennessee on a covert march south to Snake Creek Gap. The unguarded road through Snake Creek Gap led to the village of Resaca, some dozen miles south of Dalton. If McPherson could capture Resaca, then the Confederate supply line would be severed and Johnston's army would be trapped. On the night of May 8th, in the morning into May 9th, McPherson's army passed through the gap and emerged behind the Confederate front lines. Upon learning the news, a jubilant Sherman exclaimed, "I've got Joe Johnston dead." Sherman's elation proved premature, however, for McPherson proceeded with extreme caution and failed to seize Resaca. As Sherman sent more troops south of Snake Creek Gap, Johnson realized that he was being outflanked. On the night of May 12th into the morning of May 13th, he evacuated Rocky Face Ridge and the town of Dalton and marched his men south, where by the following morning they were taking up defensive positions along a 4-mile front to the west and north of Resaca. The Confederates had shifted position just in time to meet the arrival of Sherman's forces. Throughout the day on May 13th, Union and Confederate troops fought a number of skirmishes, but the day ended before the Union armies were fully deployed for battle. On Saturday, May 14th, the fighting at Resaca escalated into a full-scale battle. Beginning at dawn, Union forces engaged the Confederates along the 4-mile front. In the early afternoon, Schofield's Army of the Ohio attacked the sharply angled center of the Confederate line. The assault was badly managed and disorganized, in part because of one of Schofield's division commanders was drunk. The counterattack collapsed, however, in the face of a determined stand by a Union artillery battery. In the evening, Union forces pushed forward and seized the high ground west of Resaca, which placed the bridges leading south from the town within the artillery range and threatened Johnston's line of retreat. The following day, Sherman renewed his assault on the Confederate center. In order to fire on the advancing Union troops, Captain Max Van Den Corput artillery battery assumed an advanced position some 80 yards in front of the main Confederate line. The 4-gun Confederate battery, protected by an earthen parapet, became the center of a furious struggle. Union troops massed in a ravine directly in front of the battery, and the 70th Indiana Regiment, led by Colonel Benjamin Harrison, who later became a U.S. president, swarmed over the parapet and overwhelmed the Confederate gunners. However, Harrison's men were exposed to withering fire from the main Confederate line and had to take cover. For the rest of the day, the abandoned guns sat in a deadly no-man's land. After the sun set, Union soldiers dug through the parapet, slipped ropes around 4 cannons, and dragged them back to Union lines. As the fighting raged on May 15th, Johnston learned that the division of Union troops had crossed the Oostenaula River southwest of Resaca. Sherman had once again taken advantage of his numeric superiority to outflank the entrenched Confederates. Johnston's position had thus become untenable, and during the night his troops abandoned their defenses and retreated further south. The Battle of Resaca demonstrated that the Atlanta campaign would be hard-fought and bloody. Johnston's army had suffered some 2,800 casualties, and Union losses were at least as high. But Sherman, with his superior forces, could continue pressing and outflanking the Confederate army, driving it farther south and even closer to Atlanta.